U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry issues a corruption threat warning as a summit to tackle the issue kicks off in London. The United Nations Security Council condemns attacks on medical personnel in conflict zones. And a virtual reality app transforms your surroundings into a digital canvas. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry is attending the Anti-Corruption Summit in London Thursday, hosted by British Prime Minister David Cameron. Secretary Kerry told Oxford University students on the eve of the summit that the U.S. is working with countries like Nigeria to combat corruption.
We have to stop and ask on an international basis how it is that a bunch of generals in a country like Nigeria, which had happened previously, and the new president has run against all of this, and we're working with him now to change it. But Nigeria saw tens of billions of dollars taken out of the country. Those were schools. Those were health care. Those were infrastructure. There was new jobs hidden in bank accounts around the world.
Its goal is to step up global action to expose, Spanish and drive out corruption at all levels of society, and is calling into question the practices of rich nations like Britain and the United States. Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari is attending the one-day summit in London. Well, for some analysis on the summit, Maggie Murphy of Transparency International joins me live via Skype from London. Welcome, Maggie.
Thank you.
Now, first, would you say that, you attended the summit all day, did it achieve its objective?
There was a huge amount of optimism and a large amount of potential for this summit. You can hear around me that the summit is just closing down. So what we're interested in now is whether a lot of the commitments that were made today will actually turn into action.
Now, we're talking about the commitments. One of the commitments should be, of course, to make sure that no corrupt person takes monies out of the country, let's say out of Africa, and stashes that in Europe or Britain. What is binding about that commitment?
Well, one of the interesting things about this summit was that it's shed a light on the fact that corruption is a global problem. It's not just a developing country issue. That is quite an outdated perspective, especially when you think about the Panama Papers scandal and other major scandals involving richer countries in recent years. So here we had a summit that brought together richer countries as well as poorer countries to try to come together with a joined-up approach. The commitments that were made were bold for some countries, but were lacking in other countries. We have seen some progress on some issues to crack down on just how easy it is for individuals to transfer money from one developing country into a richer country. But the proof will be in how quickly and how effectively those measures are enforced.
But again, here is, of course, working on the systems themselves, because if it is a question of corrupt people, there are corrupt people who will facilitate corruption in the Western nations and as well as other nations.
So one of the interesting statements that was made today was about the middlemen, the lawyers, the accountants, the bankers, the professionals. We've not seen such vocal commitments from global leaders before on this issue of those people in the middle that actually make a profit out of transferring corrupt cash. There was a statement. There was also a statement from some of those professionals themselves saying that they were committed to tackling corruption and driving it out. And there was some language on the idea that perhaps if those professionals were found to be complicit, they would be driven out. They would not be allowed to work anymore. That's nice language. It just depends on what will happen in practice.
Now, very quickly, in terms of the monies that have already been taken out of corrupt countries, what kind of assurances were made that all that money can be taken back to the countries of origin?
President Buhari yesterday and today was very vocal in his call for stolen assets to come back home. And I think that message got through. We heard tonight that there will be a global asset recovery forum scheduled for after the summit, perhaps next year. And that shows that there should be more willingness, hopefully from rich countries to actually return the money that is currently situated in London or perhaps in the US or other rich countries. So again, the commitment's there, but we need to see whether that will lead to something.
Well, Maggie, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you.
Well, it's Maggie Murphy of Transparency International speaking to us live via Skype from London. Now, turning to a political drama in Uganda, veteran President Yoweri Museveni is sworn in on Thursday in Kampala for another 5-year term that will extend his rule to 35 years. On Wednesday, opposition leader Kizza Besigye took oath of office as an alternative government and was arrested soon after. Museveni officially won 60% of the votes in the February election, which the opposition says was rigged. Protests have erupted since, leading to clashes with police and dozens of arrests. Authorities blocked Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp and other social media, citing security concerns ahead of the ceremony. Besigye has been demanding that government allow an international audit of the election results, but officials have rejected their demand, saying Museveni's victory was valid. Now, for more on the situation in Uganda, joining us by phone from Kampala is Chris Ihenyi. He's a news manager at WBS TV in Uganda. Chris, welcome to Africa 54.
Hello.
Yes. Now, Chris, first, everybody was just looking at the drama that unfolded in Kampala. Let's start with what is known about Mr. Kizza Besigye, who was arrested just before the swearing-in of Mr. Museveni today.
The opposition leader was arrested shortly after his appearance in the capital, downtown Kampala, caused a bit of commotion between his supporters, and then immediately after, a video of him swearing in and, of course, declaring that he's forming an alternative government. He was arrested and taken to a notorious police station where he's usually taken whenever such an arrest occurs. But then he was quickly whisked away to another police station east of Kampala, some 70 kilometers from Kampala. And then after that, he was again taken to another center. But speculation is pointing to Moroto district, that is about 400 kilometers northeast of the capital, Kampala. But WBS has not been able to independently verify that he's in Moroto, although speculation points to the fact that he's there. And the officers of the police have said he needs to be far away from the city so as not to cause commotion, especially in light of the fact that there are international dignitaries who are visiting.
Now, we know that he's a regular visitor of the police, is regularly arrested and detained. What is different about this detention yesterday?
Yesterday's detention is pretty much normal stuff now in Uganda. You expect any time Kizza Besigye to be arrested the moment he shows up, even if he's just going to the gas station to be able to refill his car, because all of a sudden people begin to gather around him to greet him, and the police says that he's not what he should be doing. But this particular arrest was perhaps designed to ensure that the city is calm, because the tendency for his supporters to get a little excited when they see him would draw attention perhaps away from the main function that was going on at the Kololo Independence Grounds, that is the swearing in of the president. We also do believe that any time now, Kizza Besigye will be let free and he will return to his home in Kasangati.
Now, we know that Mr. Besigye has been protesting against the results of the previous election. The question is, how do Ugandans take all these developments? Do they feel like life is going on as normal, or do we see a little bit more of tension in Uganda?
There is a bit of some tension, especially within the capital, Kampala, but the security agencies have been able to roll out a massive security blanket across the city. Every few meters you meet a soldier, and then there is the knowledge that your neighbor could be an operative, so there is a bit of... The population has come to a point where perhaps everyone wants to act alone, and they think perhaps the person I might be acting nearby to is either an operative, and I'll be taken in anytime soon, and then I'll leave my children to suffer. So there's a bit of nervousness, there's that fear, and then people choose to go on with life, and some, especially the opposition supporters, hope that perhaps something, a bit of a miracle can happen along the way, and then there can be a change of government. But all in all, the city is now calm. There is people going on with what they're doing. Others are going back home after, of course, the day. And the security forces, of course, the presence is on. You can see the soldiers, especially the UPDF. Very little police officers.
Well, Chris, thank you very much. Chris Ihenyi is the news manager at WBS TV in Uganda. Not too far from there to a brewing controversy now in Kenya. Kenyan officials are drawing up a timetable for closing the Dadaab refugee camp that's home to 350,000 Somali refugees. Interior Minister Joseph Nkaisari said, having suffered multiple attacks claimed by the terrorist Somali group Al-Shabaab, Kenya set up a task force to handle the closure plan.
Kenya is committed to closing the Dadaab refugee complex. This decision has been made by government reflecting the fact that the camps have become hosting ground for Al-Shabaab, as well as centers of smuggling and contraband trade, beside being enablers of illicit weapon proliferation.
Well, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry expressed concern about the possibility of refugees being forcibly repatriated. Kenya's government has acknowledged that its decision will cause harm to the refugees and says the international community must take steps to minimize their pain and suffering. Now, rescue workers in Nairobi continue to dig through the rubble of a building that collapsed more than a week ago. At least 51 people were killed. 940 people have been rescued from the ruins so far. In response to the tragedy, the government has begun demolishing other condemned buildings. Here's Lenny Ruvaga.
Nearly 60 families prepared to spend the night in the cold after the government tore down 5 buildings in the Huruma section of Nairobi. 5 more are slated for demolition. Authorities say they were built improperly, some of them along a riverbank. Residents got 48 hours notice of the evictions.
People are moving out without knowing where they're going to live. Some have children like me. We will have to use what money we have to find other places to live or go back to our homes in the country.
This building in Huruma collapsed during heavy rains on April the 29th. About 150 families were living inside, even though the building had been declared unsafe 2 years ago. The tragedy sparked grief and outrage. And now, so have the demolitions.
My flat was legally built. We got the permit and documents to build it legally 20 years ago.
The government says many of the structures being torn down are illegal, erected haphazardly in low-income areas as the city expanded.
It was not allowed. So that's what I can say. That's why I'm calling it illegal. Who allowed it? There is no, there are no drawings, no title deed. Nobody has put his signature somewhere. So we say it was not allowed.
An audit ordered by the president last year found that 58% of buildings in the capital are unfit for habitation. Experts say builders are cutting corners and using substandard materials.
The developer thinks that if they follow the rule of law, then it will be costly for them in terms of paying the professionals and so on, and going through long approval processes. And then, in fact, again, we come to those who are meant to enforce the rule of law. They themselves are not enforcing. What you find is that there's quite a bit of corruption in terms of people being paid instead of following due processes. Demolitions
are set to resume in 1 week. In all, 226 buildings around Nairobi are scheduled for demolition. Lenny Ruvaga for VOA News, Nairobi.
Well, the 26th Annual World Economic Forum on Africa is entered its second day in Kigali, Rwanda on Thursday. More than 1,500 delegates from global and regional corporations, along with leaders from the 10 African countries, are attending the 3-day forum that started Wednesday. The goal of the World Economic Forum is to promote public-private partnership. The theme of this year's event in Africa is digital transformation. The forum comes amid a stark economic slowdown in Africa. Well, I want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa54, and check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince Makori. Well, coming up, can the United Nations improve the safety of healthcare workers in war zones? Stay with us.
technology, here's what's new.
What's new? Technology that is showing promise on how the brain works with people who have a neurological disorder. Attaching a multitude of sensors to Jim Campbell, who has Parkinson's disease, is University of California, San Diego bioengineer Gert Kauenberg and his team, who are now testing this technology that reads connections between the 100 billion neurons in the human brain.
What we'd like to do here is to go one step further and also use technology, advanced technology, but in a means that is more proactive in helping the brain to get around some of its problems, in this case Parkinson's disease.
Jim Campbell says he'll go through all the testing necessary.
I get the satisfaction that I'm helping them, and I'm hoping that eventually they'll be able to help me.
Decoding the complexities of the human brain, one of the grand engineering challenges of the 21st century. For VOA's What's New, I'm Todd Grossans.
Well, it's time now for a health report, and joining us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Mudu with some news on the Zika virus. Hello, Lino.
Hello, Vincent. A recent publication in the Harvard Public Health Review is warning that the 2016 Olympic Games in Rio de Janeiro could spark a, quote, full-blown public health disaster. The author of the publication, Canadian professor Dr. Amir Attaran, suggests the Games could be hosted by another city in Brazil where the illness is less of a threat. Since the Zika virus was first identified in Brazil in May 2015, the World Health Organization has declared the disease a health emergency. The number of suspected cases in Rio is the highest of any state in the country. The virus has spread in Latin America. Among other things, the Zika virus causes birth defects in unborn babies, and pregnant women have been advised to avoid Brazil and other areas with a Zika outbreak. Now, the United Nations Security Council recently adopted a resolution condemning attacks on healthcare workers and facilities in conflict situations, demanding compliance with relevant international humanitarian law. Adopting Resolution 2286, which was co-sponsored by more than 80 member states, the 15-member council strongly condemned attacks and threats against the wounded and sick, medical personnel, humanitarian personnel, as well as hospitals and other medical facilities. It deplored the long-term consequences of such attacks for the civilian populations and healthcare systems of the countries concerned. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon told the Council that intentional and direct attacks on hospitals are war crimes. Johan Leo is the international president of Doctors Without Borders, MSF.
Until October 3rd, I truly believe that the hospital was a safe place. I cannot say that anymore about any medical facilities on the front lines today. In Afghanistan, the Central African Republic, South Sudan, Sudan, Syria, Ukraine, and Yemen, hospitals are routinely bombed, raided, looted, or burned to the ground. Medical personnel are threatened. Patients are shot in their beds. Broad attacks on communities and precise attacks on the health facilities are described as mistakes, are denied outright, or are simply met with silence.
Liu also added that in the worst cases, the attacks amount to, quote, acts of terror. Now joining us live via Skype from New York City is Mike White, the Deputy Operational Manager for Médecins Sans Frontières programs in Chad, Ethiopia, Sudan, South Sudan, and Liberia. Mr. White, welcome to Africa 54.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
Let me have your reaction on Ms. Liu's statement, especially when it comes to Africa, the region where you work. What is the security situation there?
Well, I mean, as you and your viewers, you know, I mean, Africa is obviously a very big place, and we don't have any one security set of protocols for any one place. Certainly in the conflict areas where we're working, certainly Sudan, South Sudan, it becomes a little bit more precarious. For us as a medical organization, I think the first thing that's most important to recognize is that security for us does not exist in a vacuum. I mean, security is something that that is important for us so that we can access patients And as a medical organization, it's being able to access the people most in need, and people who have need of healthcare. And certainly, I thought Joanne, Dr. Liu, our international president, spoke to this remarkably. It's not just the attacks themselves; it's the collateral damage on the existing health structures and the health networks that are no longer able to function. 75 plus MSF supported hospitals have been attacked in the past year, making the work extremely difficult. But just to reiterate that in the places, certainly in Africa, where we're finding conflict to be a major driver, it's accessing our patients and accessing care, which are the key to our work.
So what are the security measures that are currently in place, and why do they seem to be failing?
I don't know if I would say that that they're failing. I mean, let's be clear. I mean, I can speak specifically to MSF. Different NGOs are going to manage their security different. I mean, what we can say globally in the international NGO community is that over the last 2 decades, we've seen the more professionalization of security. So this is using maybe ex-military people or ex-security personnel to manage security protocols, and in some cases to manage security in the field. That's not the case generally for MSF. Again, to highlight the fact that we are not a security organization, we're a medical organization, and our core expertise are our doctors, our nurses, and our paramedical personnel working in the 70 plus countries that we're working around the world.
So you are not, yes. Yeah. As you mentioned, you are not a security organization. Yeah. So what is done then to keep staff safe? What kind of protocol is in place, staff as well as patients?
Yeah, that's. I think that's a key question. And I think it's also important to highlight that for an organization like MSF, we have obviously two different concerns culminating with our staff. Important to highlight that MSF has 30,000 local staff working in our medical facilities around the world. The work that we do, whether in conflict or in more stable environments, whether we talk about Syria or South Sudan, or whether we talk about a stable HIV program, this work cannot be done without our national staff, and certainly in most cases they are obviously much greater risk. They do not have the opportunity like international staff do to evacuate a situation if it gets hairy, and to move to obviously more secure. Protocol and security in MSF is managed. We manage it hierarchically. So at the hospital level, we'll have a field coordinator, a project coordinator, who the one main component of their work, understanding that the primary focus is to manage the hospital, is security management. And then within security, and then that would go up to our country director at the capital level, and then up through the operational line to headquarters.
Okay, Dr. White. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate your insights. And that was Mike White, Deputy Operational Manager with Médecins Sans Frontières, MSF. And that's our health report for today. To stay in touch, find me on Twitter at Lenore Moudou. Back to you, Vincent.
Well, Lenore, thanks a lot. And be sure to watch Lenore Moudou's health reports every Tuesday and Thursday right here on Africa 54. It's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. Painting goes multidimensional with a new app. We'll be right back.
Kenya is committed to closing the Dadaab refugee complex.
I, Kiza President Fefe, swear in the name of the Almighty God be faithful and bear true allegiance to the Republic of Uganda.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. Artists, is it time to put down your paint brushes? Well, Google is making waves with its new app, Tilt Brush. With a swipe of a digital brush, users wearing a connected headset can paint life-size three-dimensional strokes of just about anything, even drawing with materials such as fire, snow, and stars. In the fashion industry, illustrators can paint with textured fabrics, flesh out their creations to scale and step around their work in progress, view it from every conceivable angle, and share with users around the globe. Like 3D painting, Tilt Brush could have an impact well beyond the world of art and fashion. Stay tuned. Well, next up, a New York hotel goes high-tech. Walk down a hallway in the Renaissance Midtown Hotel and the walls and floor come alive. Visitors can select a walking route by standing in a circle projected on the floor, point at the wall, and view a tourism portal that opens up, providing information about things to do and see. Stand in footprints outlined in a circle on the floor, point at categories displayed on the wall, and screens open up, delivering information. The digital elements are designed to appeal to young tech-savvy adults, often called the millennial generation. The 348-room hotel opened in March 2016. Well, and finally, is this the future of security? A new camera-based system can see around walls and locate hidden objects in real time has been developed at the University of Heriot-Watt in Edinburgh. The camera is sensitive to single photons at a wavelength of light about 0.002 of a millimeter in diameter. The camera is able to track objects moving around corners, even when completely obscured from view, by firing laser pulses at the floor. Researchers say the security system could revolutionize aviation or search and rescue missions. And that is what is trending today, and that is our show for today. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. If two people are on the same page in a book, they are reading the same thing. But is that what this idiom really means?
On the same page.
That restaurant was great, but I hate coming home smelling like cigarette smoke.
I hear you. I wish the city would finally ban smoking indoors.
We're definitely on the same page there.
If you are on the same page as someone, it means you are thinking in a similar way. It means you have a similar opinion about someone or something, or have the same understanding about a topic. You don't actually have to be reading the same book as someone to have the same idea. This idiom can be used in all situations. And that's English in a Minute.